what I wanted to do with Deep Roots was go beyond what we see in the news. All too often we read one headline, read one Instagram infographic, and all of a sudden we're experts. Nobody can be an expert after 5 minutes though. Afghanistan alone is over 2,500 years of history with the West. My goal with Deep Roots in this event was to give everyone a look inside not just what happened, but who it happened to. We fight these battles from all different sides, but at the end of the day, we share the same humanity no matter where we watch the war from.
For me, just seeing how serious they were about trying to protect their country and about their jobs and doing what they could do with what they had was super impressive, and for me, that was my aha moment.
When I got to Eastern Afghanistan, we found out that a military coup took place in Kabul, and the communists fought the nationalist government in Afghanistan overnight, and eventually they succeeded.
For scholars of the Middle East, and those of us that study political violence in particular, we think about Afghanistan as what we call a fragile state. So it's a state that has some common ethnic or national identities. At one point in history, it had kingdoms and a legitimate central government. It was never really liberal or democratic, but there's a sense of Afghan nationhood.
The American populace sees this much of what's truly happening, right? But really, it's so much bigger than that. And to think that you know what's going on based off this small thing that you may have read or you saw on TV, it's ignorant.
It was a fear, and I didn't expect that I will be alive anymore. And the only things I could think it was to find a place to keep myself safe. But I was more worried about my mom's because she's keep calling me, "Where are you?"
If you could describe your experience from being in Afghanistan in one word, what would that word be?
Wow. That's a hard question, just to describe it in one word.
It's hard to put it in one word.
Man.
Amazing.
Curiosity.
Eternal, awesome.
Life-changing.
Maybe. There we go. Good evening, everyone. Let's see if we can get some lights going. Hopefully everyone enjoyed looking at my email and seeing the pretty colors on stage. Tonight's been a good lesson in rolling with the punches. There we go. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Michael Popa. I'm a senior news writer at the Utah Statesman here on campus. And I'm also, as you saw, the creator and host of Deep Roots. Last spring, I was asked to write about the school's release and acknowledgement and their standing with the Asian community after the hate crime that happened in Georgia between those spas, if you remember. And one thing that I realized is that because it was such a hot topic, because everybody was writing about it, that there's nothing that I could contribute and make a news story out of it. And that's one of the foundational principles about journalism, is that you're not going to write a story unless you have something to add. And so, given that I didn't have anything to add, I really asked myself, how can I... Tonight's a good lesson rolling with the punches and dealing with technical difficulties. One thing I asked myself is, how can I contribute something new to the story? And what I realized is that people were pouncing on this news story and everything that was going on about it within the past 5 minutes. So they were asking the when, the where, the what, and the who. Nobody was asking the how and the why. And so that's what I wanted to do when I created Deep Roots. And so for this first series, I wrote three feature articles and made 3 correlative podcasts about the history of Asian Americans in the United States, going back to the gold rush of 1849, development of the Transcontinental Railroad, Japanese internment during World War II, all the way up to modern discrimination and collegiate admissions against Asian Americans. And so it was something I thought was going to be a one-off, but what I realized is I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was really valuable, learning experience of exploring the how and the why of how we got to where we are now in the lens of hot topic news. And so when I got back to school this last fall, everyone was talking about the withdrawal from Afghanistan. It'd be the first time that there were no U.S. troops on the ground in Afghanistan since late 2001. And so, same thing as before with the Asian American hate crimes that were happening. Everyone was pouncing on the past 5 minutes, the who, the what, the where, the when, but no one was asking the how and the why. And so, given that I have a big passion for geopolitics, and I myself am a service member in the United States Army, This is a topic that I felt a lot of passion for, and I dove into it. And over the course of 40 pages of in-depth historical research across 4 articles, including interviews with one of our speakers that we'll get to hear from first, Dr. Nuppy, as well as creating a nationally recognized podcast from those articles, I got to explore the history of the West's involvement with Afghanistan. But even then, with an issue that hits so close to home as this one, given that we have so many Afghan refugees and immigrants that have moved to the Cache Valley since August of 2021, I realized that historical facts and timelines weren't something that people could always relate to. And so what I wanted to do was build this collective tonight of storytellers, of people that were in this region during this time of the War of Afghanistan. We have a couple veterans from the United States Army that will be speaking here tonight about their experience during deployment there, as well as immigrants from Afghanistan as long ago as 1976 to as recent as November of 2021, as well as who I mentioned, Dr. Nuppy, our resident expert on Middle Eastern politics. And so I would love to introduce our first speaker tonight, Dr. Austin Nuppy. He is a political science professor here at the USU Department of Political Science. He is especially an expert in post-9/11 Middle Eastern affairs, has done a bunch of cool research, and is currently writing books and has done a bunch of great piecework. So welcome Dr. Austin Nuppy to the stage.
Thanks so much, appreciate it. Can everyone hear me okay? So on the evening of March 26, 2003, Ahmed al-Haik's life changed. He lived in Baghdad in an eastern neighborhood with his wife and 5-year-old daughter. That evening, in March 03, he heard the sound of U.S. warplanes dropping munitions on his city. He lived in a large city, and in the coming days, he realized that not only would the politics of his country, but the fabric of his social life would fundamentally change. 3 weeks later, the American military arrives in Baghdad, and Ahmed had a university education. He was trained in STEM, right? So had a math science background. Went from being a well-compensated professional to someone that needed to find new employment to provide for his family. An environment that was incredibly fragile, right? So he ends up getting a job as a translator and interpreter for the U.S. military. So what I want to do tonight is explore how everyday people survive conflict. We'll frame that in terms of the war in Afghanistan, but what I'd rather do, instead of stand up here and lecture you guys, is to give you Ahmed's story and that of his family and how I came to meet him. So I was 15 when September 11th happened, and I did not really think about the origins of the war all that seriously until 20 years later. I was teaching an intro to U.S. foreign policy class last August, and it just so happened that the first day of our seminar was on the day of the U.S. Withdrawal from Kabul, Afghanistan, okay? And so I had cut my teeth on the stuff, gaining interest in the region as a high schooler, and now 20 years later teaching 18-year-olds, had the realization that a fundamental chapter in U.S. history was changing. So I approached this as a scholar, as someone that does research on the region, as a teacher, someone that's trying to teach our undergrads here at Utah State, and as a father and a friend, someone that's done research in war zones in places that used to be war zones, as well as here stateside working with the Iraqi community. And so we're really confronted with 3 difficult questions, right? The first is, how do everyday people survive conflict, right? When violence comes to their community, what types of decisions do they make? The second, more challenging for a lot of us, is, hello? Regardless of if we live in these settings, can we as outsiders actually fundamentally understand what's going on, right, in the first place? And the second, do we have any business doing that, right? In my research and work in Iraq, I was confronted with this question all the time. What am I actually doing here? Am I simply a trauma tourist or a voyeur, right? Am I coming as some scholar from the outside trying to understand and just treating these people as projects or objects as opposed to people to learn from, right? So that's the second question. The third is, what opportunities do we have as people here in Cache Valley to interact with folks that are affected by conflict? When they arrive in this valley, what opportunities do we have to build relationships with them? So after the U.S. arrives in Iraq, and this is end of April or May 2003, Ahmed has a neighbor who is an attorney. who is representing someone that's been detained by U.S. forces, and has the idea that he would go alongside this guy and volunteer his efforts as a translator and interpreter. He's well educated, his English is pretty good, and he realizes that the best way to get a stable paycheck in Baghdad in 2003 is to work for the coalition. So he does that for several months, gains some promotions, is able to stay in his neighborhood, lives in a pretty secure area of the city, not really affected by Al-Qaeda or insurgent violence. Right, but at some point, that calculus for his life changes, and I'll explain how that happens. But let's step back for a minute and think about, when conflict comes to your community, what type of options do you have? Right, for most of us, if we have motive or opportunity, we want to leave. Right, we face this fundamental decision of, do I stay or do I go? What obligations do I have to people in my community that may not be able to leave? My family, elders, grandparents, people like that, right? So the first decision is, do I stay or do I go? The second is, if I stay, how do I actually navigate a really complicated environment, right? For most of us, that means keeping our head down. We try to hide, lie low, stay out of the way, right? But at some point, whether that's on the south side of Chicago or Iraq or Afghanistan or Yemen or Syria, you confront decisions about how you engage with people in the community, not only your neighbors, people you either currently trust or used to trust, but also when armed groups come to your community. Do you cooperate with these people? Do you resist them? Do you stay out of the way? Right? Very complicated decisions. Kim Gaddis is a journalist, Dutch-Lebanese woman that grew up during civil war in Lebanon in the 1970s and 80s. And I think she frames it nicely. She says, it's the syndrome of the boiling frog. You're in it, and it gets worse and worse, but your sense of how it compares to the normality that you lived 5 hours ago, 10 hours ago, 5 or 10 years ago is dulled by the intensity of the moment, right? Most of us adapt to our current circumstances, try to maintain our way of life. It's also put nicely, this is Dr. Omar Sadr. He was, until late August, a professor at Kabul University in Afghanistan. Right? He's since relocated. He lives in Pittsburgh, teaches at University of Pittsburgh in their conflict studies program, but framed it similarly. So Dr. Sadr says, I had to face this moral dilemma of whether we should stay with the people, most of whom didn't have a chance to leave, and somehow ensure that whatever meaningful contribution we made to the Afghan society could happen in Kabul. If we stayed in Kabul, to what extent would our contributions be meaningful? Day by day, the space was shrinking. It was getting suffocating. So we had to opt for certain other alternatives because it was systematic failure. It wasn't something at the individual level. By mid-August, the influence over individuals and their political system was reducing. So Ahmed faced the same situation. He, by May or June '03, was working with the coalition, but by 2010, his position became untenable. He had received personal threats against his family for working with the coalition. He shared a home with his wife and his daughter, but also his parents. So this was a multi-generational household. So he had to think about not only his own family, but those people that he lived with. And when he received that threat, he had to face this fundamental dilemma. Should he stay or should he go? Now, he had the motivation to leave, right? There was a direct threat of violence against his family. But unlike a lot of his neighbors, he also had a unique opportunity, right? He worked for the U.S. coalition, which means he had access to a special immigrant visa, an SIV, which means he could leave Iraq and relocate in the United States in a period of 2 years instead of 5 or 6 plus years. So he had a security clearance, another pre-clearance in place where he could leave. And so Ahmed took his family. At this point, he has a second daughter who's 1 or 2 years old. And through the UN International Organization for Migration, IOM, is relocated outside of Iraq. So he goes from Baghdad to Jordan, the neighboring country to the west, lives in Jordan for 2 years as he's waiting to get to the United States. He arrives in Columbus, Ohio in January 2010, where he is resettled, doesn't really have a choice of where he can go. The IOM says, okay, welcome, Mr. Al-Haik. Your new community is in Columbus. Little does he know that there's 15,000 other Iraqis in Columbus, and he ends up building a community there, but everything's new. Here's a picture of his daughter, Dima, at her elementary school. There's a great photo essay about his life if you want to pull that up. It's really neat. So he confronts this opportunity like so many of his neighbors did. Did he have the motivation to leave? And if so, what opportunities did he have abroad? So what I want to end tonight, I'll share a little bit more Ahmed's story, but where I want us to go is to think about, for us personally, those of us that live in Cache Valley or in Logan proper, what opportunities or obligations might we have to those who arrive in our community, those that are affected by violence? And what I tell my students and my young kids as well is, I think we would do well to try to develop or cultivate 3 habits of the heart. The first is curiosity. Are we people that learn to be active listeners? Do we listen well? Are we curious? Are we open to new experiences? Right? Universities are great places for that. You encounter people from a whole bunch of different walks of life. Right? So the first thing is how do we develop empathetic, active listening? Right? Very low bar. It doesn't take a lot of time. Doesn't take a lot of money. Right? You don't have to go out of your way, but you can develop the skill of being a good communicator, of an active listener. The second is charity. Right? All of us have some combination of time, money, and talent. Okay, so how might we use that outside of our families, outside of our workplace, everything else, to interact with people that arrive here, especially those that are affected by conflict? You know, Cache Valley has several thousand refugee families. Right before Afghanistan and Iraq, we have something like 300 to 400 Burmese families from Myanmar or Burma. Right, they're all around us, and so we have opportunities not only to be curious, but to be charitable with our time, money, and talent. And last thing we can think about is how are we hospitable? How do we welcome these people into our homes, into our traditions, our family celebrations, right? At a university, one of the best ways to do that, if you're connected to Utah State, is to welcome international students into your home for a holiday, right? Most of the international students in this community will spend 4 years, maybe 6 years if they do a master's, not having celebrated Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter in an American family's home, right? So 3 simple habits of the heart of how we can welcome our Iraqi and Afghan neighbors. Now, Ahmed lucked out, right? He was really fortunate. By 2008, he gets his citizenship. Now he lives in Columbus, has not only his 2 daughters, has a 5 or 6-year-old son, has a newborn as well. He, in the last 12 years, has rebuilt his life in Ohio. He's now a proud fan of the Ohio State football team as an Iraqi, so go Buckeyes. But other than that, right, he had the opportunity to not only have a visa, right, he got a new job, but in addition, he spent his time developing a local organization called the Iraqi Community Center. And through that, that's how I got to meet him. About 2015 or 16, I was working on a dissertation project on how Iraqis survived their civil war, and I was introduced to Ahmed. And through his community involvement, it started actually by building a local community program, after-school club for kids in the community that needed help with homework, English lessons. From there, it was an opportunity for me to meet his family, to work on my Arabic, and for his kids and students to get homework help. But in the last 6 or 7 years, that's really grown, where he, in his free time, not only works with Iraqis and Syrians, but also Ethiopians, Eritreans, now Ukrainians, people that are coming to Columbus in need of help as he was. And so I want to wrap up there. I don't want to take too much more time, but I think it's useful to, as we hear these stories about Afghanistan in particular, to think about the types of dilemmas people confront, the fact that they're everyday people, that we're confronted with very similar decisions, right, about how we provide for our loved ones, our families, in environments that are incredibly complicated, conflict-prone, etc. Right, so I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit of Ahmed's story. I'll stick around after. We'd love to share more of that, but I look forward to the rest of our speakers. So thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Nuppy, for sharing that. I asked Dr. Nuppy, given his expertise, to sort of set a groundwork for tonight and lay a foundation for our understanding. So hopefully with these other speakers we'll get to hear from and kind of keep some of those questions, keep some of those thoughts in mind as you hear the stories of different individuals that have been in Afghanistan in various capacities. So next, I'd love to welcome our first United States military member, Captain Dixon, to the stage. He is currently a finance officer, and while attached to the 75th Ranger Regiment, he currently works as an assistant professor of military science at the Weber ROTC detachment in Ogden. Captain Dixon.
It's bright up here. Okay, so I'm Jonathan Dixon, as you said. I enlisted into the Army in 2012, so I've been in about 10 years. My first duty station was Fort Carson, right? So I got there as a brand new lieutenant, and excuse me, day one on site, I met my new commander, and I said, "Hey, I'm Lieutenant Dixon. It's an honor to be here." And he said, "That's great. You deploy in 3 months." Right? And I was like, "Oh shit. Okay, roger that." Went home, told my wife. I was like, "Hey, sorry, deploying. It's a 9-month deployment. Don't know if I'm going to Kabul or I'm going to Kandahar. All right, but I'm leaving on this date, and I'll be back on this date." And she was like, "All right, right." So before you deploy, comes lots of training, right? Because you're about to go into a combat zone, so they need to prepare you. So pretty much those 3 months that you know, are preparing to go, you're in the field, you're getting ready to deploy, you're getting your mind right, getting your soldiers ready so everything's good to go. And it was like a week before I was supposed to deploy. The commander pulled me back in. He said, "Hey, John, there's been a change in personnel. You're no longer deploying. Sorry." Right? And it's mixed emotions, right? Because it's hard to explain. People might, when I talk to people about wanting to deploy and being in the military and stuff, they're like, "Why would you ever want to deploy? Why would you ever want to go to war?" And that's hard to explain, right? Because to normal people, that's not something they want, right? But to put it in perspective, it's like being a firefighter and never putting out a fire, being a cop and never arresting anyone, being a teacher and never teaching a class, right? Like, you train for so long to do something that you truly believe in. I truly believe that when I deploy, I will help people and I will make the world a better place, right? So you want it, and then they ripped it from me. But at the same time, you're happy because now I'm not leaving my wife for 9 months, right? So my whole unit deployed, left me behind. Still had a great time, enjoyed it, right? Learned and grew. Moved on, went to RASP, the Ranger Assessment Selection Process, to go to a Ranger Regiment, 75th Ranger Regiment. Got picked up as their budget officer, right? And they popped up for deployment without hesitation. "Hey, sir, I would love to go. Please let me go." He said, "Of course, you can go." Right? So fast forward, right? Again, train up, ready to deploy. The entire battalion goes before me because I had some things I had to take care of in the rear for my job. And then I flew out all by myself, just Lone Ranger, right? And they tell you what to expect, and you talk to your buddies that have been before, but you can't help but in the back of your mind think of a war movie, right? And so you're like, all right, I'm on the plane, and I'm like, what am I gonna get off to? I have no idea what I'm walking into here, right? And then, I don't know if you remember the time back in 2019, but they locked down some airspace because someone shot a missile, right? So I got rerouted, and I spent a week on some Air Force base. I don't remember the name, I apologize, in nothing but the clothes I had on my back. They just kicked me off the plane, sent me through customs, and there I was in some random country, right? Again, I'm like, I don't know what to expect. I'm all by myself. I just got on a random bus, found my way to some barracks, went to the PX, bought some clothes. I was there for a week, and then I was like, okay, well, this isn't my deployment. I'm supposed to go to Bagram. This isn't what it's like, right? Finally, my time comes. It's like 3 in the morning. Get on the plane, fly off. I'm going to Bagram. I'm deploying. I'm getting there, right? You hear the wheels come down. Heart starts to race. You're like, all right, what do I expect? What do I expect? I don't know what to expect. I'm nervous. I get off the plane, and it was a big city. I went to Bagram, giant base, right? Huge. There's everything there. There's restaurants. There's MWR. They closed down the road for PT in the morning. So got there, and I was like, well, this ain't that bad, right? I just hanging out with my buddies in a random country. So it was like that for about a week, right? So you got to understand, every soldier that has deployed has a different experience, okay? There are so many things that go on to your experience when you deploy. Is it fighting season, right? If it's fighting season, there's obviously more conflict, okay? Fighting season happens in the summer. No one wants to fight in the cold. It's cold, right? Where did you deploy to? Afghan's big, right? Did you go, which region were you in, which province? The cultures are different, right? What unit are you there with? What was the unit doing before you, right? What time did you deploy? At the beginning of, the surge in Afghanistan and Iraq, taking a foothold in any country takes a lot of casualties, and it's not an enjoyable process, right? So every soldier, depending on their timeline, has a completely different story, okay? Well, I'm at the end, so I walk off, and it's not that bad, I'm having a good time. And then all of a sudden I'm out one night, okay? So I was on reverse schedule. I was awake during the day and slept, or awake at night, slept during the day. So it's like 1 in the morning. I'm in the gym, right? I'm working out. I'm just starting my shift. And sirens start going off, right? Incoming, 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 seek cover. Incoming, 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 seek cover. People are yelling at you to get out of the gym, right? They got bunkers, go find a bunker. They got, I forget the name again, big old machine guns on walls, and they're shooting the rockets out of the sky, right? So you just hear, brrr, and you got these tracers going everywhere. And then you're like, oh shit, this is real. You know, like I went from my enjoyable hanging out to my buddies to I better find a bunker, right? And so it changes your mindset. Because when you first get there, they tell you and they train you up. But your mind doesn't switch until you have a moment that tells you you need to be ready. You need to be prepared. You need to defend yourself. You need to know where your exits are, where your cover is, your concealment, your weapon, your friends, right? Possible enemies. You need to know all that, okay? So that's where that switch happened. But then 2 hours fast forward and life goes back to normal, because taking incoming fire is pretty a relative thing. It happens often, right? So everything goes back to normal. It was like that for a while, and then I had the opportunity to go to this really small base called Tarankot, right? We had some business we had to take care of there. Got to meet with some of the local Afghan forces, like 3 or 4 brigade equivalent commanders, so they're colonels, right? And the chief of police. We had to meet with them and do some business, and that was a whole new experience. Right, so I went from a big base that had its own airfield and all this to landing in Tarankot, where the airfield's not secure. It's maybe a quarter mile around, right? The food was terrible, okay? The food in Bagram was delicious, all right? They had ice cream. And then you go to Tarankot, and I got MREs. Now, MREs are not that bad, right? But they're not ice cream, okay? So go there in 24/7, AK-47s rocking. Right? You just hear them all around you. You hear incoming, explosions, right? 24/7, night and day, okay? And I talked to the chief of police, and I'm like, how many casualties do you take a day? And he's like, well, we have generally around 5 to 6 dead, double wounded. Daily, right? Could you imagine going to work every day knowing that 5 and 6 of your buddies, they won't go home that night, right? That was their daily life. So we were there helping our business, trying to help them, so, make it so they wouldn't get so many casualties, help them analyze the terrain, use features better, et cetera, et cetera. Can't get into too many details, but we were trying to help them with that. And I was there for... My plane out kept getting scratched. So I was there for probably a week and a half. And I can't remember one day where I didn't hear AK-47s constantly, right? And it was a good experience, right? It's a humbling experience to think of the troubles you have back home. They're not that troubling, right? Like, yes, some people deal with some serious things, but 5 to 6 people dying every day. And then you come to find out that village around that base, no one lives in it anymore, right? ISIS came in and took it. So there's no local populace in that village anymore. They own it. There's booby traps. They can't go back into their houses because they might explode, right? There's rat tunnels everywhere in case, so the ISIS can move along without being detected by our imagery, right? And you're like, man, my troubles are not that troublesome. Okay, and had the opportunity to work with a lot of the locals on that trip, and I was fortunate to see a lot of love, hard work, and dedication, and I was also able to see a lot of extreme violence, right? It's no different anywhere you go. So you got people that are just trying to make it, they love their country, they love the people around them, they're grateful for the help that they receive, and you got some people that they hate you for it, right? And you watch them fight to the death. And that's daily life. That's their daily life, right? Someone loves you or someone tries to kill you. And it's terrible. But they were great people, amazing food. Oh my gosh. If you have never been to an Afghan restaurant, find one, okay? Oh, they made me a traditional Afghan meal. It was so good, and they just fed me till I couldn't eat anymore, and they just kept putting it on my plate. And I was like, please stop, no more, no more. And they just kept giving it to me and giving it to me. I ate like a king that night, and I'll never forget the hospitality that was shared with me while his men were fighting that night. He was kind enough to show me that hospitality. All right, fast forward, got the opportunity again to go on a couple more adventures, if you will, right? So got to go out and see Afghanistan through the night and see different areas of different villages. Beautiful country, right? All under nods, of course, so it's all a little green, but the stars are amazing because there's wasn't no lights out there, and just out there enjoying the mountain views, right? And the villages, dogs barking in the distance, right? Some gunfire out there and explosions, of course, but you got to take what you can, right? Take the beautiful with the, the good with the bad. And then I came home, right? And I got to go back to my normal life. It takes you a little bit to kind of get used to how things process now, right? Like it takes you a little bit to unwind. Like when you go to the gym and you're hyped up on pre-workout, you come back, it takes you a little bit for your body to relax. Same thing, right? I was on a lot of pre-workout, okay? It took a couple weeks, right? You come back and you go back to your normal life, and things are normal. People are deploying, they're coming back, same experiences, different experiences, but, their life remains the same. They remained that way for, as long as we've been alive, because before us, they had conflicts before it was other people, So that's really my experience. It's a small experience. I wasn't there for nearly as long as some other people. Some people were there for years. They were not years, but 12 to 15 months, which is a long time to be deployed and be away from your family. But at the same time, like, they still got to come home. So that's all I got for you guys. So.
Thank you, Captain Dixon. We appreciate it. Obviously, really a fascinating story, so it's great to hear from him. There are a couple ROTC cadets here in the audience tonight, so if you guys get a chance, ask them about the meals that are really enjoyable. That's what an MRE is. So make sure you ask them about this, and they're really good. Our next speaker is also a veteran of the United States military. Major Sorensen has been serving in the Utah National Guard for about 20 years now, and also for a while served as a law enforcement officer, both as a deputy and also as a police officer with the Provo Police Department. He resides in Spanish Fork with his wife and commutes up here every week to teach the MS2s over at the ROTC detachment here on Utah State's campus. So welcome Major Sorensen to the stage.
So Captain Dixon is awfully right. This is bright up here, but I can still see most of you. So first of all, I want to thank everybody who has given us the opportunity to be here tonight to kind of share our experiences and stories about Afghanistan specifically, and just giving me an opportunity to kind of share with you the good, not so bad, because I deployed in 2013, 2014. And we were actually in western Afghanistan. So if you know anything about the geography of Afghanistan, we were close to Herat. I think it's the third largest city in Afghanistan. Compared to the two, Kabul and Kandahar, it's the third largest city. And I love history, by the way. And Alexander the Great built a castle there, which still stands to this day. It's an amazing place. And there's a lot of other features there about Afghanistan that, as far as the history that existed thousands of years ago, that are still there to this day. And I was excited to be able to go to this particular place. So let me just kind of explain my mission. I actually deployed to Iraq as well, 2007, 2008. Didn't have a really good experience there. And again, had the opportunity, like I said, to go back to Afghanistan in 2013, hoping for a different experience, which I got. So I was part of an 18-man, what they call an SFAT team, or Security Force Advise and Assist team. And as Captain Dixon mentioned, anybody who's in the military, for the most part, that understands, truly why they joined, wants to go to certain places to actually help people. I know that may sound a little bit strange or weird, but that's the reality, and that was the reality for me, and it sounds like that was the reality for him. I truly felt like that by going to Afghanistan, I would be able to, even though I was, one man or, a team member of an 18-man team, that I would truly be able to make a difference in the area where we're assigned. And in the end, I really felt like we did that, and I'll explain what I mean by that for sure. So we initially, like Captain Dick said, when you get the call, or you know and understand that you're actually going to go to a foreign country, you start the train-up process. We ended up being in Mississippi, Camp Shelby, for like 2 months, getting ready for this deployment. Did all kinds of stuff to prepare. I really wished I would have brought some videos just so you can see, the good and some of the funny stuff that we had to go through to get prepared for this. We finally get done with that and get to spend a week with our families, and then we're in Afghanistan. And it's just like he says, you never know what you're going to expect. You think, as you're getting ready to go, that it's going to be like in the movies or something like that, and then all of a sudden you end up in this, really amazing place that's not like that at all. There's not a lot of violence there. There's, you don't hear gunshots. You don't hear anything like that. And for us, initially, that's how it was, for sure. So we were actually stationed in a small, sorry, this has got a lot of feedback, but we were in a small base called Camp Stone, which was about 5 miles from another larger military installation run by the Italians called Camp Arena. So if you know anything about Afghanistan, that's kind of where we were. We were super close, and Herat was right next to Camp Arena. So we were really close to that location. Our job was to work with the Afghan border police, and they were responsible for, at least in our area, for securing the border around Iran and Turkmenistan. So those are the two areas we were responsible for. And let me just kind of paint you a picture about how they secure their borders. You have kind of an idea of how we do it here in the United States with our neighbors, to the north and to the south. How they did it, they would actually build small little. Does everybody know what a HESCO barrier is? How many people know what a HESCO barrier is? Some of you, a few of you. A HESCO barrier is it's like a giant a grocery sack that you put dirt in, and you can expand it, and you build walls with it. That's kind of the best way, at least that I can explain it. They would build these small little facilities around these different border areas, and that's all there was. And they would put like 7 to 8 men out there for about 2 weeks at a time. They'd give them, a little bit of food, a little bit of water, and not very much ammunition. And that's what they did to actually secure the borders. And so our job was to be able to help kind of improve those processes and to be able to lend support where we could. Obviously, the United States, we have a lot of equipment at our disposal. And, through us, they were able to access that. That was part of our job as well. So aircraft, drones, ammunition, fuel was a big part of what they kind of needed. So we helped them out with all that and taught them different processes to be able to figure out how they can do that on their own. I'm just going to share a quick story, and if I get emotional about this, I apologize, but this is one thing that will always stick in my mind about Afghanistan and just the people and how amazing they actually were. One night, one of these border checkpoints got attacked, and it was overrun by the Taliban. Several people had been killed, a number of people have been wounded, and they had no way to get out there because the area was so hot. And also, just so you know, we drove around in large up-armored, they called them MRAP vehicles. They were well-armored. I felt pretty protected. These individuals drove around in Toyota pickup trucks, just like you would buy at Larry H. Miller, Toyota or whatever. They had a little bit, they were modified a little bit, but not much. And that's what they drove around in every day, and that's how they did their job in these vehicles. Well, they got overrun that night, and they asked us to help evacuate them that night. And the helicopters, the aircraft were all being used for some of their operation, and there was no aircraft, and they couldn't get to their folks until like 2 days later, if you can imagine that. And it was an unfortunate incident, but it was how they lived their life. And these folks cared so much about their country that knowing the dangers, knowing everything they'd have to go through, sometimes the lack of support that they had, they would still go out and they would do their jobs every day. They would drive Toyota pickups. They'd go out to these checkpoints, and they would stay there for days on end just to protect their country. And it gave me a greater appreciation for, number one, what I had here in the United States, and it gave me a better appreciation of what it really means to be a patriot. We think we have an idea of what it means to be a patriot here in our country, but really until you go out and experience and see what they actually experience and what they have to do every day, that's real patriotism, at least in my book, in my opinion. I had the opportunity to actually mentor an Afghan colonel, and he was in charge of what they call the quick reactionary force. So if there was anything that happened on their particular base, or if there was something that happened in a village that wasn't too far, or that was in their area of responsibility, he was supposed to respond to that with what equipment he had and try to quell whatever that violence was, or take care of, whatever the situation may be, if that local force couldn't take care of it themselves. And so when you're an advisor, you develop a really close relationship with your counterpart, and I did with this gentleman. I would see him about every other day. We had to travel. It took us about 2 hours to get from where we were to their base, where they worked and where they lived. And I had such a close relationship with this individual that he and his son spoke English. His son was 14 years old. We would have telephone calls, during our engagements, and I would talk to his son, and he would practice English with me. Not that I'm really good at English anyway, but I was the only English speaker, that he was there with, and that we could practice with. But I had an opportunity to speak to his son and get to know his family and develop that relationship, which was something that I wasn't used to, for sure, and that I never thought that I would experience as a soldier in the United States Army. And so this gentleman, still to this day, I really wonder, what happened to him for sure, and really wish we would have been able to keep in contact, which we haven't been. So that was part of my responsibility, or part of my job in Afghanistan. The other part is that we had the opportunity to oversee a number of different building projects. For example, in Herat, they were building the first women's college that I think existed in that particular area right there. And we had the opportunity to kind of oversee that and help them with that process as well. I don't know if that was ever completed, to be honest. We left before the completion. I really hope it was, for sure, because everybody was so excited about the opportunity that they were going to have with that college or university there. Also, we helped oversee the building of a couple of schools in different places as well. And those are really important, but what really got to me is how grateful the people were when we went out and helped them build a well in their village. We think that, or we're lucky that we can go to the kitchen or to the bathroom or wherever and turn on the running water. They have nothing like that in certain places in this country. And we had the opportunity to help them, be able to get water, even to the point where they were able to pipe it to some of their different locations in their villages, which was outstanding. The hard part for me, I'll be honest with you, was leaving. So you would think being gone away from your family for a year, you'd be super excited to come home, and you are, don't get me wrong. But because we developed these, such a close relationship with these individuals that we worked with every day, and that we helped every day, it was hard for me to come home and to just kind of leave them there, hoping that the people that replaced us would be able to help them just as much as I thought we were able to, and care just as much as we did about their future and about their situation as well. So for me, coming home was difficult. You can ask my wife, and I didn't experience a lot of what you would call combat. Our unit was attacked one time when we were out, and the rest of the time, we were just worried about IEDs, and we were never once hit with an IED, even though we'd roll up and down the road and there'd be IED, craters and stuff all over the place. But we were lucky enough we never had to experience that. We never lost one single man in our particular SFAT unit. But those guys, like Captain Dixon said, would go out every day in these pickup trucks and patrol their areas and try to make their country safer, and they would give their lives for their countrymen and for their buddies, to their right and to their left, to make sure that they had what we had in our country, which is safety and security. That's all they wanted. They wanted to be able to walk down the road and be safe. They wanted to be able to open up a business, a market, and be able to earn a living for their family. They wanted their kids to be able to go to school and get an education. And I felt like while we were there, we were able to kind of help a little bit with that process. So that was my experience in Afghanistan. I enjoyed my deployment. I'll be honest with you. You won't hear, and maybe you will hear, a number of soldiers tell you that their experience was a little bit different than mine. But I enjoyed my deployment. I would do it again tomorrow. I would spend 2 years there if they would let me, whatever amount of time. Don't tell my wife I said that, though, please. For sure, she would smack me. But I did enjoy my experience, and to the point, and I'll just leave you with this, that I would joke around with the colonel that I was advising, and there was a really nice spot of property up on a hillside not too far from where we worked. Actually, it was near the U.S. Embassy there in Herat. And I would tell him, I'm going to buy a house there. I'm going to build a vacation home right here, and we're just going to hang out like all the time. He would just laugh at me and said, "You're crazy. You're crazy." And anyway, I love my experience. I could talk all day long about the different things we're able to see and do, and just very grateful for the Afghan people for just how amazing they really were. And they're just like you and I. You would never know that until you actually, and we're going to have an opportunity to hear this. I'm super excited to be able to hear about this in just a minute. But they're just like you and I. They want safety, security. They want the same things that we have. They want freedom. And we had the opportunity, at least in my mind, to be able to help out just a little bit with that process. Anyway, that's all I got. Thank you.
Very excellent story. Thank you for that, Major Sorensen. Our next story is going to be another excellent one. I've heard it before. He shared it multiple times throughout the community. And when I thought of this project, the first person I thought of to get involved was Sabor. It's a story that really hits home and is, it evokes a lot of emotions and makes me think about a lot of things that, we've got to hear about tonight. So I'd like to welcome Sabor Saheli to the stage. For those of you that have been to Angie's Four, this is the man that built that restaurant. And so I'm sure he's going to plug cleaning the sink to make sure he can bring some of you guys there. But Sabor Saheli.
It's a sign of old age when you have to have notes and a stool to sit on, right? So sorry. First of all, well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm not going to be talking a lot about geopolitics, but I'm going to kind of give you a human story. I am one of those endangered species that left Afghanistan in 1978. I grew up in eastern Afghanistan in a little village not too far from the city of Jalalabad. For those of you who know about history, it's not too far from Khyber Pass. So as a child, as I said, lived in a small village. The funny thing was in the summer months, it was so hot that people live on the rooftops. The rooftop, there were flat roofs adjacent to each other. Everybody slept on a rooftop. It was pitch dark. I mean, I've never seen darker skies in my lifetime, and I've never seen more stars in my lifetime. So at nighttime, you'll be sleeping on a rooftop and you'll be looking at the sky, millions of stars. And I'm hoping and wishing that someday I'll be able to see those stars here in America. I haven't been able to see it. The interesting thing was that there was a lady next door, an older lady that lived next door, and at nighttime, I could hear her conversations. She'll talk about her grandson being in America. This was the early 60s, so she'll say, "Oh, I hope my grandson Gafar is all right. I'll hope he's okay," and so on and so forth. So for the first time, it instilled the idea of America in me, and I couldn't wait to learn to read or write. Once I learned to read or write, I started reading about America, American history, what goes on in America, what's happened in America. So the life in the village was amazing. I mean, it's like the Lake Obigon of the Garrison Keillor novel. People knew each other. I mean, we knew who had what for dinner every night. If you didn't like dinner in your home, you went to the next door. And that's where you had dinner, you know what I'm saying? So the other thing was, I remember when we slept on a rooftop, have you seen falling stars at nighttime? So my grandma used to tell me that every single human being on earth had a star up in the sky. And every time when you see a star fall, somebody just died in the world. So I was scared to death. I kept thinking, I hope my star doesn't fall quick, because I want to live. I want to live longer. So as I said, things were simple. And then pretty soon, I turned 6, 7 years old, and it was time to go to school. And school was a little castle. I mean, it was just an old castle with one door, and Grandpa decided to take me to school and see if he can get me registered there. There were no birth certificates in Afghanistan at the time in the village. So Grandpa took me there. When I got to the school, thousands of kids were out there with their grandparents or fathers and anybody. They're trying to get them registered. And when I walked in, the principal was sitting in the middle of the schoolyard, and This principal asked my grandpa if I was old enough to start school, and he said, I think he is. So they opened my mouth and counted how many teeth I've lost. And based on that, I made a determination that I was old enough to start school. So school started, and the very first day of school, I will never forget that the celebration was huge. So my mom and grandma took a huge bag of candy and dumped it all over me. That was a celebration of school. But, you know, it was like a 25, 30-minute walk. There were rice paddies, lush green rice paddies all over the place with a tiny little trail going to school. And some days I'll be scared to death. I was afraid to walk to school alone. So my mother will stand by the orchard door with her red scarf, and she will tell me, I'll be watching you, keep going, I'll be watching you. So I'll be walking to school, and I'll keep looking back to make sure she's still there, and eventually, the old saying is her scarf will fade away in the distance, and I made it to school. When you got to school, the principal greeted you at the door. If you're 1 or 2 minutes late, he had switches in his hand, he'll greet you to make sure you're never late again. For those of you who always complain about school lunches, guess what the school lunch was? Mom has made me a little backpack and some homemade bread in it, and at lunchtime there was a creek that went right through the school. We grabbed our bread and dipped it in the creek water, and that was our lunch. And the second thing, for the first time I heard about America from the lady next door. The second time, when I was a child, maybe first grade or second grade, powdered milk came to Afghanistan. And the powdered milk said, the gift of the people of the United States of America. And there were two hands, there was a handshake on it. It means that the American people through USAID send powdered milk to the Afghan people. When I saw that, and literally I got perked up again and said, you know, that's the same country that I was listening to the old lady about, and they're sending us powdered milk. So I further decided to think about this and someday, hopefully, to make it to that magical place. So anyway, elementary school goes by, and then high school goes by, and I'm still thinking about someday making it to America. And this is like the early 70s and late 60s. And but those days in Afghanistan, there was only one university, Kabul University, and there was a medical school in the city of Jalalabad. So hundreds of thousands of high school kids will graduate, and about 5 to 10% of them will have an opportunity to go to college. There was a college entrance exam. It made it so difficult that very few people were able to pass. So when you're in 8th grade or 9th grade or 10th grade, you just day in and day out, you study to make sure you pass that exam. And your parents basically put the fear of God in you, and they told you if you flank this exam, you're dead. So you studied and studied and studied, and you didn't have a choice what college you want to go to. Based on your scores, the university determined which school you're going to go to, and they went ahead, and I was one of the lucky ones. I finished the exam. I went to Kabul University. They assigned me to College of Mines and Geology, which was Kabul Polytechnic at the time. So when I'm there, as a sophomore, there was a scholarship that came to university. They call it the Fulbright Exchange Scholarship. And I was told that, you know, if your grades are good and if you're on top of your class, you'll have an opportunity to go to the United States. And that was enough motivation for me to literally lock myself in the library day in and day out. And again, I was lucky enough to be picked as a Fulbright Scholars Exchange student. And in the winter of 1975, we came to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That was a phenomenal experience. We lived with an American family. We took the English language classes at Pittsburgh. So if my English is bad, we have to blame it at the University of Pittsburgh. So it was a 3-month program. So they took us to the White House. They showed us the Senate building and the Mint building and so on and so forth. Many students from all over the world arrived in Pittsburgh that winter. So we had an opportunity to meet people from Peru, from Brazil and Argentina and everywhere. It was a 3-month program. The program ended, and I went back to Afghanistan and finished college. In 1977, when I graduated, military service in Afghanistan was mandatory. If you're a college graduate, you have to go to the military for 6 months. After you finish that, then you're able to apply to go to overseas. I mean, without it, you could never get a passport. So eventually I ended up serving for 6 months in the army, and we're stationed right next door to the Pakistani border in the city of Jalalabad. We were in tent city, well, with the thousands of tents, we're all in tents. I mean, the water was cold. There was a cold creek going by, so every morning we lined up and shaved in the cold water. We spent 6 months in the tent. You learn all the military tactics and so on and so forth, and we're able to get our certification. When I finished that in Kabul, I started working as a junior college teacher while I was applying to come to the United States. So I applied. I was going to go to University of Pittsburgh. I was determined. I knew my way around Pittsburgh, and I was going to go, and the family that I stayed with were very willing to help me. I had a high school buddy that had come here 2 years prior to me to Logan. And he basically wrote to me that, no, don't go to Pittsburgh. Utah is a very nice place, mountainous, kind people, nice people. I've never heard of Utah. I've never heard of the LDS people. So I'm debating, should I go to Pittsburgh? Should I go to Utah? Should I go to Pittsburgh? Should I go to Utah? Long story short, he sent me the paperwork. I get admission to Utah State, and now I'm convinced that I'm going to go to Utah State. I decided to go to Eastern Afghanistan, where I went to school, to say goodbye to my grandparents, that I'll be going to the United States. When I get to the village at 10 o'clock at night, at the time, there was no TV in Afghanistan when I was there. The radio was there. Grandpa always listened to the 10 o'clock news, and when he was listening to 10 o'clock news, Radio Kabul, Radio Afghanistan was down. There was nothing going on. She was worried. I said, maybe something wrong with my radio. Our cousin next door came and said, I just listened to BBC London. There's a military coup taking place in Kabul right now. The communists are fighting the nationalist government in Afghanistan. Thousands of people are dying. I think that the coup is in progress as we speak. My father wasn't home, so the next thing in the morning, I got on the bus to get back to Kabul to make sure my family's okay. And every 15, 20 minutes, there's stands, and you got the communist military in power between Laghman and Kabul. It took 3 to 4 hours finally to get to Kabul. When I got home, the windows in the house were all busted and broken because the bombing that took place. In Afghanistan, what happened is that in the 60s and the 70s, 90% of the military personnel were trained by the Soviet Union. And when you went to a military academy, immediately they'll send you for a 7-year scholarship to the Soviet Union. You were 19, 20 years old. By the time you came back, you're 28, 29 years old. And about 80 to 90% of those kids brought Russian wives with them. So they're all indoctrinated in the Communist Party. So what happened is the Communist Party, along with the Air Force, conducted a deadly military coup against the nationalist government of Dawood. His name was Sardar Dawood, and he was in power at the time. To make the story short, for 24 hours, the fighting took place in the middle of Kabul. The ground forces went for the nationalist government, and the Air Force went for the communists. They bombed the hell out of parts of the city. Literally, the entire presidential palace. So what happened is, when I went there in front of the presidential palace, the tanks were literally melted down to the ground. So by first thing in the morning, the president at the time had an emergency meeting with his cabinet and his family members. Keep in mind that the president, his wife, his kids, his brother's wives, they all live in the presidential palace. Finally, the communists were able to enter the palace. They executed the entire group. They executed the president's wife, the president's kids, the president's brother, his wife. An overwhelming majority of the cabinet got executed, except a couple of members who happened to be outside Kabul. They were lucky enough not to be in Kabul. So the communists took over. Now here I am, I have my passport, I have my visa, I'm supposed to be coming to America, and the communists barely took over. The first thing they did, they said that no visa is, no visa is legitimate anymore. We have to go back to the process and stamp everything by the communists. That was a scary fear. But the second thing is what they did is that they said, you know what, no one can take more than $200 from the bank. And that's the maximum you can take from the bank. And I was told if you came to America as a student, they call it evidence of financial support. At the time, you had to show $1,500 when you arrive in the United States. If you don't show it, they'll send you back to Afghanistan. So many, many people told me, do not go, do not go, do not go, do not go, just stay. So finally, I happened to be having tea in a friend's ruck shop, and I had a good family friend who happened to be a professor of philosophy with a PhD from Germany. He was looking for me. He went to my house and asked my mom where I was, and she said he was having tea in a friend's shop. And here I am, I'm up in the air. Should I go, should I not go? He walked in, I'll never forget his Volkswagen. He honked at me. I stepped outside, and then he said, what are you doing sitting here? I told him, well, having tea. He said, what's your decision? I said, I don't think I'm gonna go. He got extremely angry. He says, the airport is fixed, the runway is fixed, the first flight is tomorrow. You're gonna get on that first flight, you're gonna leave no matter how much money you have. Take your chances and go. The anxiety went right to the roof. A friend came in that night. When I came home, first of all, I told my mother, she was fixing dinner, that I'll be leaving tomorrow. She went to hysteria. He said, no, you're not gonna leave. You finish college, you finish military service, you're gonna get married, we're gonna have grandkids. And finally this friend came in the middle of the night. We went all the way to the other end of Kabul, bazookas and machine guns and military checkpoints all over the place. We worked our way there. A gentleman there had some dollars on him. I bought $300 in dollar bills from him, so at least I have a little more money in my pocket. When we came home, I took a brand new toothpaste, and I took the $300 bills and shoved them in a toothpaste, put them in my shaving kit, and that night we never slept for even a minute. First thing in the morning, never said goodbye to anyone, brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles, nobody. First thing in the morning, my dad and my mom took me to the airport, and they told me that if they get your money, if they cut your money and they find your money, as you leave the tarmac, those at the airport are so small that you didn't have the little walking that you go to the plane. So he says, as you step up to the plane, don't wave at us. They were standing up there on the balcony. They emptied my suitcase and they emptied everything. They looked at it. They checked my pocket. There was $200 in it, and they said, you're good to go. I got on the airplane, and there was a young lady. Her name was Sharifa. She was going to Iowa. There was a gentleman. His name was Abdul. He was headed to Texas, and here I am headed to Utah. The three of us are sitting next to each other. And the anxiety is such, I've seen so much devastation and so much anxiety and fear that you can cut the air with a knife. So even if I'm sitting on the plane is taxiing, I'm still worried that they're gonna come back and they're gonna get me and they're gonna get me off the plane. So eventually the plane took off. And the first time when the pilot announced that, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering Iranian airspace, finally I sat back and relaxed, and I got a glass of water. I knew that I was out of there, and I think I'm on my way, and I'm gone. So the plane got to take a stop in Istanbul, from there to Tehran, Iran, to Istanbul, to Frankfurt, Germany. When I get to Frankfurt, Germany, the first thing I do is I take my toothpaste and I squeeze it in a sink, took the $300 bills out of there and put them on the side to dry them. The next morning, we're going to have an early morning flight. I went to bed, but the gentleman that was with me, Abdul, that happened to be going to Amarillo, Texas, he says, you know what? I've been through hell. I think I'm going to go and party. I'm going to have a drink somewhere. So I went to bed. I'm sleeping. About 2 in the morning, somebody's shaking me. And I wake up, and here's Abdul. He had a tie on. His buttons are all gone. His tie is hanging. He says, you know what? I had $500 on me. I went to a bar, and somebody took my wallet and threw it to another guy. He escaped. They stole all my money. He said, you need to go to the police station with me. This is like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. So I put my shoes on, get down to the front counter, ask for the police station. I end up going to the police station with him. So the police started investigating, and I spoke halfway decent English, obviously. So we're talking to the police. They interrogated him, interrogated me, on and on and on. And keep in mind that the German police are the best in the world, I've been told. Final conclusion was by 5 in the morning that I was the one that stole his money. So the police came with a conclusion. Finally, the guy told him, he said, listen, I'm drunk, but I'm not stupid. He was sleeping. Somebody else stole my money. So he has no money. We finally, first thing in the morning, we worked our way to the airport. The plane took off, and TWA was the old flights. Those you don't remember, you're too young for that. The plane took off and came to New York, to JFK. As the plane is getting closer and closer, and I can see the skyscrapers of New York City, my heart is literally sinking. The memory comes that I'm going to go to the immigrations. They're going to ask me how much money I have. I'm going to show them the money I have. They're going to send me back to Afghanistan. And then the communists will say, you know, this guy went to the United States for 24 hours, got a crash course. He's a CIA. He just came back, kill him. So I'm literally, I cannot even describe the feeling. I keep telling God, if He can help me through this, I promise I'll be good for the rest of my life. So eventually the plane lands in New York City. We all three of us head towards the immigration counter. So the girl that's going to Iowa, she is first. So she goes first, and they ask her, where are you going? She said, to Iowa. I said, what's taking you to Iowa? She said, I have a brother in Iowa. They looked around, they stamped her passport, handed her the passport. I said, oh my God, this is awesome. My turn comes. He says, going to Utah. He says, do you like skiing? I said, yes, sir. He said, how are things in Afghanistan? Oh, terrible. He looked at me and took my passport, took it, went back and showed it to a supervisor and came back and stamped my passport and handed it to me. As I'm trying to gather up my passport to put in my pocket, the gentleman that's headed to Texas, he's right behind me. He gets to the counter and they ask him, where are you going? He said, to Texas. He said, let me look at your financial evidence. When I heard the word financial, the entire airport spun around me. I said, oh my God. So I hurried up, run to the luggage claim department. I was hoping to leave my luggage just to get the hell out of the airport before they catch me. So as I'm leaving the airport, I hear my name, Sabor, Sabor, Sabor. I look behind me. This gentleman with 3 police officers are walking towards me. When I saw that, I thought, you know, you're toast. Maybe he told him, this guy had no money either. How come he got away? He came to me, he says, you know what? You lucked out. I think they're going to detain me. Can you give me $50? I opened my wallet, gave him $50, and the next thing is I left the airport and I'm exhausted because I hadn't slept in Germany, I hadn't slept in Afghanistan the night before. I finally, for the sake of time, I'll fast forward the story. I end up in a hotel and I crashed, I collapsed in the hotel. I woke up in the morning, I'm feeling pretty good about myself, and I went to the hotel lobby and had me a little breakfast and orange juice and some coffee, and I felt pretty good. And I went to the front counter. My ticket was only good to New York. My father could not afford a ticket to Utah. He said, you know, I said, well, how can you get to Utah, sir? What's the cheapest way? He looked at me, he says, Greyhound bus having a coast-to-coast fare for $65. You need to find the Greyhound bus depot. Go to the Greyhound bus, and that took a long trip to get to the Grand Central, New York. Hundreds of busing in an underground area. Finally, I found me a bus that was headed to Utah. I get on the bus, and the bus stopped in every dinky town in America. I'm not kidding you. And my anxiety is to the roof. I can't eat anything. You know, this guy sitting next to me, he's headed to New Mexico. He's eating double cheeseburgers and fries every stop. And I'm having potato chips, and because I'm watching my budget, so potato chips and Coke, potato chips. Eventually, I got to Logan, and I called my friend, and my friend had a little apartment on 400 North. I called him. The Greyhound bus depot is where the Center Street Grill is right now, right next door to Edwards Furniture. Logan was extremely small. This was 1978. 10th North was the end of town. 1400 North did not even exist. So I get here, and I arrived there. My feet were all swollen from a long trip, and he took me out to dinner that night, and he said, hey, how much money do you have? Opened my wallet and showed him by the type I paid for the hotel or for the bus, for food and so on and so forth. Not much money. He said, God, that doesn't even cover your books. That's half of your tuition. What are we going to do? I said, what should I do? He said, Logan is small. I'm going to send you to Salt Lake. There's a friend there. I want you to get a job for the summer, and then fall, come back to school. Long story short, 2 days later, he put me back on a Greyhound bus to Logan, to Salt Lake City. An Afghani friend picked me up, made me a little room in the very basement where the pipes are, made me a little tiny bed. He said, go and keep looking for a job. The best place to get a job is in a restaurant. I'm applying all over town. One day, finally, there was a restaurant called Lamb's Grill right on Main Street. Main Street is no longer in business. I walk in there, the Greek gentleman said, when do you want to start? I said, right now. Grabbed me an apron, put these huge pots and pans in front of me. The valedictorian in my class, Fulbright scholar, college education, junior college teacher. Here I am washing pots and pans, and he showed me how to clean the bathrooms and everything. I look at myself, I said, well, you have to do what you have to do. So that summer, I started working there, and about a week later, I got another job. There was a little restaurant called the Red Apple. They were making sandwiches. I'll go in the morning at 7 in the morning. I'll make sandwiches there till 2 o'clock. Then I'll run behind the back door, go to the new building till midnight. I'll wash dishes there in the other building. And I got me an apartment in Sugar House. So some nights when the restaurant was busy, the last bus will leave and I'll walk from downtown Salt Lake to Sugar House, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm just reflecting on things. Eventually, fall comes and I come to Utah State and I get admitted to Utah State. I start school. My money didn't go very far. I'm looking for work. I don't have a car. I don't have a phone, anything. So I'm applying all over town. Every Saturday I'll go and check on my applications. Where Angie's is, used to be called Sambo's. It was like a Village Inn or IHOP. It was a chain restaurant. Saturday morning I walked in. The dishwasher hasn't shown up. The manager asked me, soon can I start working? I said, right now. Hand me an apron, and I started my career in that building. So I was a dishwasher when I'm a student. A few months later, they made me a cook. A few months later, they made me an assistant manager. I swore to myself I'd never, ever work in a restaurant again. I said, I have a degree in mining, I have a degree in business, I'm going to work for an oil company, I'm going to be a big shot. You know what? Nothing happened. When I graduated from college, they fired the store manager. They offered me the store manager's job, and I took that. I still think, in the meantime, I was dating my wife, Christine Willis. She's sitting right there. When I was a dishwasher and a cook, she was a server there. She's the native of Utah, native of Salt Lake. She grew up on Hawaii, by the way. So we got married after graduating in 1980, and I still I'm aggressive looking for something else. They need an area manager for the state of Oregon and part of Northern California, and they interviewed me and they doubled my salary and moved me to Oregon. Angie, our daughter, was 1 year old. We moved to Oregon. So about 2 years later, the company went bankrupt. They closed down all their stores, including the one in Logan. Here I am in Oregon looking for work now. My sister-in-law from California came visiting. He said, you know what? Don't go and work for someone else. The restaurant in Logan is closed. Actually, go back to Logan. I even got a name for it. My daughter was sitting in a high chair. He said, call it Angie's. So that night I thought about it. We had no money. So the next morning, I made a trip to Utah. Long story short, found the landlord, negotiated the lease with the landlord. And in 1983, we opened a restaurant with 15 employees. My wife, I'll be working from 5 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. She knows for the first year I never took a day off. And I will go home sometimes in the evening and she'll come and waitress for a few hours so her money can buy diapers for the kids. We're renting a little basement apartment. We did not even have a bed. We slept on the floor. And that's how we started the restaurant. And that was how many years ago? 39 years ago. And now from 15 employees, we got up to 80 employees. So the bottom line is that I am eternally grateful to this country. This immigrant will always be grateful. Not to this country alone, but I'm I will remain eternally grateful to the people of this community that bestowed many awards on us. I gained my education here. I gained my wife here. I've got 5 wonderful children and 2 amazing grandkids. And I gained my citizenship here. So I am frankly the luckiest guy on the God's green earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sabor. What a wonderful story. So you guys can obviously see why I wanted to get him up here when I thought of this project. Now, I know he said he didn't steal his friend's money, but he told me a little while ago it's actually the down deposit he made where Angie's is right now. So our last speaker tonight is going to fast forward us from the 1970s and 1980s and bring us to last fall. Marwa immigrated here from Afghanistan during the withdrawal process of the United States troops from Afghanistan, and she's also got a really fascinating story, and I'll leave her to speak about. So, Marwa.
Hello, everyone. By the name of Allah, good evening. And today I want to not explain my experience. I'm talking about my whole life in Afghanistan. And as you all know that my name is Marwa Safanezi, and I was born in 1997 in Afghanistan, in Kabul. And we are living in the edge of Kabul. And I have 2 sisters and 2 brothers, and my old sister, she's in Oklahoma, and my young sister, she's in Pakistan as a student, and my brothers with my parents, they're still in Afghanistan. And I growing up in a Kabul, and I really enjoy to growing up and in a Kabul and see and witness of the transfer of Kabul city and with a major of airport. And when I was in a school, I wished to becoming a pilot, and I always dreaming about to becoming a pilot. And I really hard work to becoming a pilot, and I studying, and even as a Afghan girl, it was really hard and challenging for me to continue my education. And by the side, I went to the English class, and then finally I find out that when I was in high school, I find out that there is no pilot class in Afghanistan for civilian side. There is only one at Civil Aviation Institute, and I work really hard for that institute to find a way and start my education in a Civil Aviation Institute. There was a 4 test, and I passed, and I was really happy for that, and I was think that this is the first step that I can achieve my dream. I assumed that maybe after that I can become a pilot, but there was a separate field, and I have a hello. I have one teacher in Afghanistan, and he told me that why you choose air traffic controller, and I said because I want to become a pilot. And he told me that if you becoming a pilot, you will control one plane, and if you becoming a air traffic controller, you will be able to control all the airplanes. So this is more than what you want. And I feel like this is the great things that, and I really hard study to graduate from this and start my training in a tower, which in a media they're mentioning it a lot, HKIA. There was, but after I graduate, I have to wait for 2 years to get this position in a tower. And there was a contractor, American contractor, and a Turkish, and we are hired by them. And before I start working with them, and I went to I tried to find a job obviously no one else will accept me because I study in aviation field, and I need to find a job in aviation. And I went to the authority, and finally one airline offered me one job, and I really feel happy. And I say that because I need the job to support my family, and I was the only one who got a job, and I was so happy on that time. I still can remember that day. And 2 years I was waiting, and I watching from the window of this company. This company was right in front of the tower, and I wish to, and I got a job, and I can support my family, but I still wish to go to my dream was becoming a air traffic controller. And then I went to a lot of challenges and hard things, and I mean, so many obstacles in front of me that finally I made, and I started working in a tower, and I was so happy. And then we have a 5 position in a tower, and I started my working in the first step was a training in a ramp position, and I really enjoy to work there, and the day when I make there, and there we are hearing a lot about the Taliban wars out of the city, and I have experienced a lot of bombing and kidnapping and explosion and many insecurity the city was so unsafe, and the way I make from home to airport every day or every 2 days per week, like always we have an explosion or something happen, and I just think that I wanted to becoming a air traffic controller, and I will make it. And then when I start my work as a air traffic controller there, and after a year, the COVID is hit everyone, and it hit us, and then they stopped working, and I continue my education, and they say that the NATO stopped the Afghan camps to the inside the airport because they wants to protect everyone, and we are staying there. And after COVID, we start working back, and I was so excited, and I so happy for that we are going to start back to my training, and I will be done, and I will be becoming a fully certified controller, and eventually in 15th of August. Before that, I heard a lot about that they are talking about the peace in Doha, that they're talking about that they're going to bring the peace in Afghanistan, and I thought maybe it will be great for everyone, and I wish to the Taliban is coming and join with this government, and every day was get more worse in other province. The war get more worse, and so many people is die for that local and military, but still we all wish to that the peace will coming, but unfortunately in 15th of August, I was in a early morning, and I waking up, and I say my mom that it was about the 3 months I didn't receive my salary, and my mom told me that, okay, now you can go and bring some money from your saving, and I say, okay, I will go and try from ATM because there wasn't any money in any bank, and I went to many different banks, and I couldn't find money, and I couldn't pull my cash from the ATM even, and it's not work. And I called my supervisor from airport, and I asked him that is the airport ATMs work, and he said no, it's not work, but if you want you can try it. But because I went to there and I tried, but it's not work, and I walk up to go the main branch, and I was the middle way, and I see that all people is running to me, and I don't know what's happened, and it's happened a lot for me. And then I expect maybe it's explosion, because it's always when explosion happen, people is freaking out. They're always is running everywhere, and then all people is running, and people is jumping on the car, and their car was a bump to bumper, and I was just stopped in a edge of the one store, and then when a lady is crossing me, and I asked her that what's going on, and she told me that Taliban is hand over the Kabul, and I couldn't hear any the other sound. The only I could hear it was my heart sound that I couldn't believe that they are hand over the Kabul. And I stopped for a few seconds, and I ran with the people, and after a few minutes I don't remember where I'm going to go, and then my mom called me, and she called me, and she always called me Mother John. She called me, Mother John, where are you? And I said, Mom, I'm in a middle way, and I don't know where should I go. My mom told me, okay, don't freak out, just come back home. And I want to go home, and I want to get a car, and I couldn't find any car. The whole road was blocked, and I went to another bus station, and there wasn't any bus. And my supervisor, he knows that I was in the middle of the way, and he called me back, and I asked me, where are you? And I say, I'm in the middle way, I don't know where should I go. And he told me, okay, don't worry, just come back to tower. And I running all the way, and people also running with me. And when I ran, and I see I see the Afghanistan flag is on the ground, and there was so many military was standing in one checkpoint. When I see that there wasn't anyone there, and they are leaving them gun, and they are throughout them uniform, and there wasn't anyone there. And when going inside the airport, there was many people there wants to get a fly, and all they just broke the door and they're running, and I ran to in front of the tower, and it was so scary, and the Turkish military held me and asked me, where are you going? And I couldn't say anything, and I just showed my budget, and I say, and he just let me go. And when I go inside the tower, there was my supervisor with the 5 Afghans, and there was 3 American, and the rest all was gone. And they told us that, okay, let's evacuate us all to go the military side. And we are all running to the car, and I take the car, and the way I went to the north side, and I call my mom, and I say I couldn't come back home, and I'm going to go in a military base. My mom said, okay, but I'm waiting for you before it gets dark, come back home. And I say, I will come, just take a time, give me a time that everything is get calm, then I will come. And I went to the military side, and then I was standing in an alternative tower, in the downstairs of the alternative tower, where I was in the outside, and I see that the military Afghan Air Force, they're stalling the airplane, and they're running into the opposite direction of runway, and I thought they start to fly with their Air Force airplane, and they fly, and one of them is holding in the middle of runway, and the American military was scary that what if they're shooting on us, and they start shooting on them, and then they're shooting back to them, and we are all running to the back of the obstacle was there, and we are hold for a minute, and then they say that we have to live in here, and went to the inside of military. And when we went to inside of military, and I was there for 2 or 3 days, and there was as a spot to hangar, and under of those hangar was a safe place. We hold ourselves there. We keep saving ourselves there, and then we are hearing a lot of guns. They're shooting gun on us, and there people is coming and running everywhere, and they're all trying to come inside of the American base, and the American base is pulling them. They're trying to push them back, but they're all wants to they're try to run away from Taliban, but the American also couldn't help them with this, because it was a plan for American go first, and then the Afghan, and then it was a schedule for them, and they're trying to stop the people, but the Taliban is coming close to us, and the people is trying to go inside of the military to save themselves, and then after 1 day, I talked with my chief controller, and I asked him what will happen with us. He said that we are really sorry to say that we are getting a meeting, and we are not going to take all Afghan with us, and Afghan will stay, we will leave, and after that maybe they will evacuate you guys as well. And I was the only Afghan ladies with the 8 Afghan men, and the rest was American military. And I was in a whole night, I told, what should I do? Should I live in here? Should I stay and wait? And I think that if a Taliban is arrested me in here, they will be more dangerous for me. I have to live in here. And I decided to, after they're leaving, I will leave in the back door of the tower, the airport. And it was at 3 o'clock. 2 o'clock. It was at 2 o'clock. They're coming back. They say that the flight is canceled. And one of the American lady that I'm really thankful from her, and she's really take care of me, and she gave me a bed and everything, and I was my purse and nothing else I have, and she gives me as shoes as well because I don't have a shoes. I ran all the way and my shoes was break, and then she told me that okay, we are coming back and maybe tomorrow we will see what will happen. And it was at 4 o'clock. My chief controller came in and told us that we are going to leave at 8 o'clock. And in 8 o'clock, and I take ready for going to leave, and I call my mom and I say, Mom, I'm not coming, and I'm going to leave in here. And she asked me, where are you going? And I say, I don't know where we are going, but we are just leaving. And my mom said that my mom couldn't believe, and I say, I will call you when I make anywhere. And I couldn't call her back, and then we are leaving Kabul, and I really went the day when I do remember when I was about to leaving Afghanistan, I just looked all the Afghanistan and and I take so deep breath and I say, they will never, ever, I will be back, but I never can forget as well. And my whole life was in Afghanistan, and it was really hard for me. And all my dreams destroyed, first of all, I lost my family, and I thought that we are going to leave, but no one knows when I will be able to visit them again. The day when the Taliban coming and hand over the Kabul, my whole family is just separate, and we never can go back. And we always, in Afghanistan, it's a culture that we are always is growing up, and we are always staying with our family, and never, even if someone is gay married, I mean, the ladies is leaving, but not the boys. We are always staying together. And for me, it was really hard. My first time, I just leave Afghanistan, and even I wasn't able to see my mom. I really wish to hug my mom at least. And then I will leave Afghanistan and we went to the Doha. And I was in a camp, and there was like 1,000 of people, and we don't have any air condition, and it was really, really hot, and so hot. And the only can I do is only drinking water, and I couldn't even cry, and I couldn't even say anything, and I just was waiting. Whatever the people is doing, I just follow them. And after 2 days, they're just processing us, and they're saying that now the time that the American should, and whoever has a green card of America have to separate from Afghans. And all my coworkers and American coworkers, they're leaving us, and I was with the 8 Afghan men. And when they are leaving, and I start to, and after that they told us, okay, now we are let you that because I was the only Afghan girl. They say that okay, you're coming by yourself now. We are move you from in here to another military base. And I thought maybe it will take a week or a couple days or maybe at least 10 days. And when I went there, I was there for 22 days. And I was only in a one room. The first night I sleep and I remember the whole sound of that I hear from Afghanistan. And I remember that when the day I'm leaving, I look forward my back and I see there was a little girl, and she just looking and she just looking on me, and I just keeping on my eye, and I say, what happened with her? And it was a fact. It was really hard for me, and it was really was like I couldn't believe, and I say, if it's a dream, I want to wake up. And after 22 days there, I went so many times to the military. I want to live in here. I was only in a one room, and it was really hard for me. And there was a lot of Afghan men, and they're always is bothering me because I wasn't by myself. And there was always is told me that she's coming by herself, and there was like, she's working with American. That's why she's coming in here, and they're all judging me wrong. And I was just locking myself in a room, and I don't want to go outside, even not for a food. And my coworkers, he brought me food, but I told him stop to bring me food. I don't want to eat the food. I just want to live in here. And then I went to the military, and one of the ladies, she also was an American lady, and she came and asked us about what's going on, and I told her I want to leave. I'm by myself. I couldn't stay in here. The Afghan men, they're always coming and bothering me, and they're knocking my door, and they're checking my door, and I'm not feeling safe in here. And she said, okay, I'm going to put you in a priority to live in here as soon as possible. And it's take like a week, and after that I leave there to Saudi Arabia. And I was there for 2 days. We don't have any shower, we don't have any things there, because there was only a basic things for a military. And they said we couldn't, Saudi Arabia said we are not accept any refugee in here to be in a military base, so get them out of in here. And we are all leaving back to Doha, and I was in Doha for 1 day, and after 1 day they gave us a flight to go to Philadelphia. And when I leaving to there from Doha to Philadelphia, and Philadelphia to Indiana, and I thought, okay, I'm in America and I will be done in it soon. And it took 40 days. And 40 days I was in a room with my roommates, and we don't have, and sometimes we are sitting and we are talking about them family, and she cried for me and I cried for her, and we are spending 40 days in Indiana. And I was the first one there say that, because they asked me that which state you want to go, and I say I want to go to Utah. And they sent me to, because I was the only one to choose the Utah, and I was the first one. I leave a base, and I fly from Indiana to Chicago, and Chicago to Washington, and Washington to Utah. And in a whole way, I thought about that. what should I do? What will happen? And when I came in here, and I thought because I'm working with American, they will give me opportunity that I can start working back to my field. And when I came back in here and I talk with, and I find some information that they told me that none of your document will be accepted. And you was a year traffic controller, good for you, but in America, FAA only accept a citizen. For other your documents, it's not acceptable for us, and you have to start from begin. And this was one of my big loss, because I know how much I hard work, how much I spend my time, how much I accept the risk, and how much I fight to went to the school, and I graduated from high school and start and aviation, and I was really feel proud. I really proud of myself that what I want I'm almost achieved. But then in 1 minute, it just all gone. When I arrived in here, and I was 30 minutes, I was in a hotel in Nairobi of the airport, and I started looking for a job. But there was some Afghan, they told me you only can find a clinic or working in a restaurant. They're not, your English is not enough. And I feel so sad, and I only came with nothing, and I couldn't get a job. My education is not acceptable, and I was really lost my hope, and I thought everything is done. You have to start from zero, but I didn't know how to start. I was mad, and I was sad, and I couldn't do anything, and I just waiting for whatever will happen. And finally, CCS, I'm really appreciate for them. They got me a job, and they introduced me with a nice family, ex-family, which they really support me and help me, and I'm really thankful for being nice and treat me like them girls. And from my chief, that he always is fighting for me, for all of Afghans to evacuate us with them, and for America and the American military, which there always was patient, and they help us that we are leaving Afghanistan and we are making in here. By the way, I get my freedom in here, and I lost my whole life. First, my family, my education, my job, and everything. And thank you for your all attention.
Thank you, Mara, for that really, really touching and heartfelt story. Super quick, another round of applause for all of our speakers tonight. Just a huge thank you to them. Now, I can imagine I'm not alone when I say this, but I was barely old enough to remember 9/11, let alone 20 years of the war that I'll never watch unfold over TV. And so each of these perspectives, and I learned about them, and hopefully you the same. These are different parts of the war in Afghanistan you never saw, never knew of, never heard about. And I think taking the reason I started Deep Roots and looking at tonight really highlighted the how and the why. With news nowadays and our phones in our hands, we're really spoon-fed the who, the what, the where, the when, and most oftentimes through a lens that's most applicable and makes the most money for the people feeding us that information. But it's really up to us to answer the how and the why, and to dig deeper into the news and to learn really what's going on and what we can do to help educate ourselves and educate the people around us. Some of our speakers are going to stay afterwards, and they'll meet us in the lobby if any of you guys have any questions for them. But outside this theater and outside of talking to them, really do what you should do and take it upon yourselves to educate yourselves on what's going on in the news, what's going on in the world around you. I'm a victim of the same thing, but it's really easy to fall into the same trap of just worrying about what's going on in my life. But obviously there's a lot more going on in other places around the world with other people's lives. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. It was a privilege to host this and put this project together, but it's really you guys that did it, and thank you all for coming. I'm Michael Popa, and this is Deep Roots.